717 borrowers are still waiting for the banks to lower interest rates. Now, the Reserve Bank cut rates to 3.25% on Tuesday, but the Big Four have not made any move to lower their rates. So let's get some reaction from our big guns of politics, Environment Minister Tony Burke and Shadow Treasurer Joe Hockey. Good morning to both of you. Tony, I just want to ask you this, because basically political pressure is going to be the main catalyst, isn't it, for cuts by the banks? What's the government going to do to put any pressure on them?
Well, it's not just political pressure. The biggest pressure you can put on the banks is the market pressure. And I've said it before, the changes that we've now put in place to make it easier for people to switch from one bank to another, you need to be willing to take advantage of it. There's a lot of people waiting to see whether or not their bank will pass on an interest rate cut when there are already smaller banks that are available with much lower interest rates right now. I was looking through the paper at what I'm currently paying with one of the smaller banks, because I made the switch a few years ago, and comparing that some of these big banks, even if they pass on the full rate, the deal that I'm getting already is less. And the only pressure that is really going to work here, so sure, we as a government make the demands, we create the expectations, but people have to be willing to go out and get the best deal.
Joe, it is a bit rough. You're a finance nerd, you're Shadow Treasurer. This gap between the RBA's official rate and the average mortgage rate is now larger than it was before the GFC. There's no argument, is there? No justification not to pass on the full cut.
Well, nothing that we can see, nothing that you can see. The RBA in its statement actually said that the banks are not under funding pressure. Therefore, we expect them to pass them on in full. But you're absolutely right, Koshy. The more the government talks about the cash rate being at 3.25% or 3.5%, the less pressure is on the banks, because what people are actually paying is certainly higher than that. Yep. No one out there is paying 3.25% or 3.5%. And that takes pressure off the banks, that sort of rhetoric from the government.
Gents, it's been making news all week, this international custody dispute involving the 4 young sisters who've gone back to Italy. The Courier Mail is reporting on the Commonwealth that it helped the girls come to Australia in the first place. It says our Rome embassy helped organise travel documents and provided cash. The paper points out a family court judge found officials didn't knowingly help the mother to do something wrong. Tony, do you know for sure, was everything above board?
Yeah, it was, and you've got to know, as an Australian, if you get in trouble overseas, we've got posts there who quite rightly are there to help you. They've got to work within the law of the land, and they don't break local laws. But they'll provide what assistance they should, and as an Australian, that's one of the rights that you have by carrying an Australian passport.
But Joe, our diplomats need to be really careful, don't they, in these sorts of cases?
Oh, they do, but literally millions of people come to Australia every year. They apply for visas, they go through a process. There are people that overstay as well, but you can't be held accountable for every single case, so I'm going to let Tony Burke off this one.
And he's smiling and glad you have. All right, I want to ask both of you. Tony Abbott's wife has come out to defend him against critics. Big front page headlines everywhere. Margie's told News Limited papers that he is not sexist and he gets women, adding he even empties the dishwasher and he cries in sad movies. He sounds like the perfect man, Joe. Is that the Tony you know?
Well, actually, it is a Tony I know. I've known him for nearly 30 years. I think Margie Abbott...
Didn't he deck you at football training?
Yeah, well, Koshy,
That's football
I'll tell you what, if I was playing with you, Koshy, I might have been tempted as well. So, well, we nearly did on the Kokoda Trail, remember?
Exactly.
But I just say to you, look, Margie Abbott has had enough, and I think, you know, I perfectly understand him. She's a very private person, and she's had enough of all this misogynist rubbish that's being run out by critics of Tony Abbott. I tell you what, our mums, our wives, our daughters all make feminists of us at the end of the day. And look, I think what's happened is that Tony Abbott has a wife that has had enough and a family that's had enough of all the criticism from Labor in particular.
Tony, what do you reckon? Because your female cabinet ministers have come out all guns blazing against Tony Abbott and really dubbing him a woman hater.
Well, our problem and our issue is with Tony Abbott, not with Margie, and so family members don't come out often. When they do, I'm not going to have an argument with Margie Abbott.
OK, do you believe her?
Well, I look at the stories. I've seen Tony Abbott with the swearing at Nicola Roxon at the press club. I've heard the stories of the punching of walls. Maybe he's aggressive and negative to everybody. Maybe it's not just women. I don't know. But I'm not going to have an argument with Margie over this. Certainly, there's a level of negative. I don't think we can get around the fact there's a level of negativity and aggression that we've rarely seen from a federal leader that is there in Tony Abbott. That part of it's got to be true.
Well, mate, over the many years I've been in federal politics, I've seen plenty of aggression in federal politics. But what's been done to Tony Abbott over the last month or so, the allegations that have gone even to the extent of calling him a misogynist pig or a thug, as the Deputy Prime Minister called him, fair dinkum.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything quite like this. And Margie's had enough as well.
All right, guys, thank you for that. Have a good weekend. We'll catch you next week. Here's
See ya.
Sam.
Thank you. Japanese scientists have made a fertility breakthrough which could be good news for couples struggling to have kids. They've managed to use stem cells to create working eggs. And to tell us all about it, Sunrise GP Dr. Ginny Mansberg is here. Ginny, good morning.
Good morning.